particularly the students community who's learning about cognitive psychology through this course, to ask questions in this live session. If you by some chance are not able to attend this live session, there will be a third live session where you can ask your doubts and questions. And as you know, there is a forum where you can always post your questions about whatever doubts you have about this course or the course content. Also, you might go to my web page in the Department of Humanity and Social Sciences and write a direct email to me if you have problems or queries which you think was not answered onto the forum, or if you want to get some extra information which has not been presented to you or which you like to ask personally, you can post a mail directly to me, and depending on the time I have, I'll definitely try to answer your queries. So all those learners who are with us today, I'd request you to ask your questions, your doubts, feedbacks, queries, suggestions, any kind of interaction that you wish to do. You can put them in the chat box here, and if there is a question, I'll reply to it. If there is a suggestion, we can discuss it about it. Feedbacks are always welcome about what you think about the course or what you think can be done to improve nature of interaction that we're having in this course. So all those things you can put down here. There is also a Excel sheet which is circulated uh, before each live session. What you could do is you could use that also for putting questions to us. And I have just one question today in this Excel sheet, and I'll try to take this question and answer it. I'll also welcome other learners who are here to put questions in the chat box, and we can then discuss those questions. And so, uh, Krishna Hamsa, he is a student, I guess. Yes, he's a student. So he has put in a suggestion to float more advanced cognitive psychology courses for research students. Now, I will be happy to do that. There is a course, uh, a couple of courses that I generally float for my regular students, regular PhD students. Some among them, at least two courses, are on human memory. There is a course on advanced cognitive psychological process, so advanced psychological process, and there is also a course on human engineering and ergonomics. So these courses are already there for the students, the regular students of the institute. But I'm also trying to put some of these courses for the NPTEL SWAM portal or the SWAM interface, so that more people get benefited by this particular approach or this particular course. So let me talk to the administration and see if there is a possibility for me to put new courses, and if there are, then definitely I'll do that. I'll put up a new course, and in the meanwhile I'll also ask you to put in your suggestions or feedbacks directly to me or to the forum of what is it that you would like the course to be on. So advanced cognitive psychological process or advanced psychological process would be a huge course. So what especially would you like to see in this course? As you know, there are several cognitive processes, and my specialty, I would say, or area of research falls somewhere in attention and memory. So these are the two areas that I'm very well versed of, or something which I would like to work on. So that is what I focus in my PhD courses or my graduate courses. So if you want for me to put advanced courses in these areas or any area of cognitive psychology for that matter, I'll be happy to do that, and I'll take in this suggestion and I'll put this suggestion through to the administration, and let's see what the responses. So there is one more question by Krishna Hamsa only, and the question on the chat forum says, can hypnotism or hypnotic counseling affect cognition in terms of behavior modification? Uh, Hypnotic counseling or hypnotism, as you say, I don't know what you understand by it, but not a lot of people can be actually hypnotized. The key of hypnotism is suggestibility, which basically means that you have to have a more trusting personality, or you have to have more suggestible. What I mean by this is that people with stronger personalities don't go through hypnotism. This is one fact that we have to realize. So, people who are more trustworthy, or people who are more suggestible, which means that they tend to listen to people, or they're your hypnotic counselor, only for them the hypnotism is going to work. So, what is hypnotism then? It's a process, or it's a technique which makes you go into a hypnagogic state, as kind of a state where you sort of let your control in the hands of other people. That being said, whatever you see in the popular movie cultures, that don't work, right? But there are researches, or there are studies, evidence studies, which were done on war criminals, or particularly on mostly on military professionals, to see whether this hypnotic suggestion can actually lead into behavior modification. Some clinical studies were also done. So, some time back, I think some 8, 7 years back, I was working with the Charité hospital. It's a very huge hospital in Berlin, and they do this clinical studies and behavior modification through hypnotism. And from what I learned there, that it is possible to control certain kind of behaviors, or correct certain kind of behaviors through this hypnotic suggestibility. So, one word answer to your question is yes, it is possible, but then it depends upon a lot of factors, and it's a very I wouldn't say very high, but a moderate success rate. So, that is the combined answer which I have for you. Other people who are watching, I'll also ask you to put in your questions, whatever questions you have for me in this session, and I hope I gave you satisfactory answers based on whatever my knowledge goes, or wherever my knowledge goes. So, all those learners who are here with me, I'd ask you to put in your questions. Now, a quick look at what we do in this course for those learners who would like to get a summary of what the course is about. The course presently, which I'm doing about cognitive psychology, or introduction to cognitive psychology, is a very basic level course. What this course tries to do, or rather attempts to do, is introduce you to the basics of human psychology through a cognitive viewpoint. So, basically, a cognitive psychology, and it's very introductory in nature. So, what this course tries to do is to give you a glimpse of a number of cognitive processes, or a number of fields of cognition, and how they interconnect with each other to form the basis of cognitive processes, cognitive processing, and cognition as such. So, that is what I'd say the bottom line of this course is about. What the course flow is, it starts with explaining to you how the external world, which is the world which is outside of you, that gets translated into the internal world, which is the psychological meaning, or the psychological world which is inside of you. So, we start by explaining what is sensation, which is basically the process of converting or interacting with the psychological world with the physical world, and then the process of perception, which is basically making or generating meaning from whatever input comes in through the sensory organs. Then we go into the world of attention, which is that process which decides what is to be perceived and what is not to be perceived. So, what are the theories, that kind of a thing. Later on, we look at memory, which is the process of not only encoding but also retrieval and storage of information. So, different kind of memories. What we do here is give you the preliminary theories of memory. So we don't go into too detailed theories of memory. Remember the model or the attention-driven model. These are a little bit old. So newer theories have come up with the embedded process theory of Kahn, or you have the electrophysiological theories, the oscillatory theories, brain theories. So different theories have come up, but these are not for introduction purpose, and that is why I have not introduced these theories. Also, one major thing which is lacking is the biological basis of behavior or cognition, which we don't cover here since it's a basic level course. So once we are done with memory, looking into what is sensory memory, short-term memory, and then going into what is long-term memory, the older conception of what memory is, I also introduced to you to the field of working memory. It's a very interesting field. Started with the works of Alan Bradley and Logie, and from there it extended. Nowadays, you can see it in different worlds. Some addition which I always wanted to do in my courses is bringing in the idea of prospective memory, which unfortunately at the point when the lectures were recorded, which was way back 3 or 4 years or 5 years back, when this area was somehow not included. So if in future I get some time, I'll include the area of prospective memory, which is memory for future events. And then this is how we divide the section of memory. Later on, we look at advanced cognitive processes. So, for example, what is problem solving, what is thinking, how categorization is done. So, what is category formation, categorization, and then we move into the idea of logic, reasoning, and finally wrap it up with the likes of what is decision making and what are the theories of decision making. So that's all in all the breakup of this particular course, or this is how the course flow really develops. But if we take an advanced course, or if I try to put up an advanced course, I'd just be focusing on 1 or 2 sections, maybe attention and memory, or maybe perception, attention and memory, or just memory for that matter. I have just a course on memory that I teach for my postgraduate students. So that could also happen. We can especially look at one topic or one model as a course. That can also happen. So these are some of the things that we can do as an advanced course. But here I would like your suggestions on what you would like the new courses or new applied cognitive psychology courses to be like. So that being said, and welcome more queries and questions, suggestions, feedback. As I said, all kinds of interactive materials which you can put in the chat box. And I see another 2 comments here. Just one comment for that matter. Anxiety and stress. So anxiety is the precursor to stress, I'd generally say. So it's kind of anxiety is basically a feeling of nervousness which comes to you, and stress is the arousal that the system, your physiological system experiences. So basically, by definition, stress is a kind of change in your homeostasis that you feel because of certain kind of events, play, or persons, places, objects, things, or that kind of thing. Anxiety, as I'd say, it's a kind of disturbance that you tend to feel, and in generally in for anxiety for that matter, there is something called anxiety falls in also into the idea of clinical domain. So basically there is a term which is called the generalized anxiety disorder, or the GAD, and what this means is it's categorized under I think XS2 of your DSM-4R. That is what I am familiar with. 5 has also come up. And what does this generalized anxiety disorder means? It's a state of hyperactivity. I wouldn't say hyperactivity, but nervousness, where you don't know the reason of why it is happening. And if it happens to you for more than 6 months, you can classify this nervousness, the continuous nervousness that you feel as anxiety. Stress, on the other hand, so anxieties generally tend to be more negative in nature. But stress then has a positive effect also. So stress can have positive effects and negative effects also. Technically, a little bit stress is required for you to improve your performance, but then if the stress increases beyond a certain limit, or it goes to a certain break point, it will be disturbing for you, or it will be counterproductive for you. So that is the best definition or the best explanation that I can remember right now. uh, I think I would have answered your question to some satisfaction, but I'll give you a detailed answer on the forum uh, by doing the exact comparison of what these two things are. Okay, so Mudra has a question. Sir, I did not understand the Bradley working model from the video. Okay, so Mudra, let me explain the idea of what working memory is. Let's look at what short-term memory or short-term storage. So the conceptualization of short-term store, as explained by Atkinson and Stephen, says that short-term store is just a static store. It's a store which keeps information in it but doesn't do anything on it. The only thing that you can do with any information which is in the short-term store is repetition, right? So the number, if you do a number of repetition, it passes along to the long-term store. Now there is a question. The question is based on the evidence of something called the serial position curves, or the idea that the short-term store is limited in terms of how much information it can store. Generally speaking, it's believed that 7 plus or minus 2 chunks is what the information you can store, and all information in the short-term store is coded in only one way, which is acoustic. Acoustic coding is the only coding which is available for short-term store. There are multiple experiments done. For example, one evidence comes from the serial position curve, where items in the middle of the list, which had some personal meaning for the subject, they got processed in a better way. Now you have to understand this. What the your Atkinson model tells us about a short-term store is a way station. It doesn't do anything on the information. It just repeats the information 7 plus or minus 2 and transfers it to the long-term memory. It is in the long-term memory that information is stored, sought, processed, and sent back to short-term memory for later recall. But when experiment like your serial position curve was done, it was found out that some words, names, meanings, or objects which were in the middle of the list, they also were remembered better. Technically speaking, items at the front of the list and items at the back of the list should be remembered better because of something called your proaction and retroaction. Items at the front of the list would have already been processed and so would be in the long-term memory, and items at the end of the list would still be in the short-term memory and are still being repeated, so you would pay more attention to it and they'll be remembered better. But what about those items which were in the middle of the list and which had some personal meaning for it? It was also better remembered, which basically means that this particular rule of the U-shaped curve that you see, the serial position curve, was somehow broken. One thing that was proved out of this was the fact that the short-term memory, which was thought of as a static store, was not static anymore, which means that it was able to communicate with long-term memory and pull this information from long-term memory, that this word, so let's say there is a word which is called Tommy, which is the name of your dog, and remember it better. So this idea that Tommy is a dog and Tommy is something which is personal to you as a pet and you should remember it better. This information or this rule is coded as a propositional logic into the long-term memory. So until and unless the short-term memory knows this, it will not be able to better process it. So if it is able to communicate with long-term memory, the very idea that short-term memory is a static store now gets broken. Also, the fact that when Bradley did experiments where two tasks were given to people, an NBEC task. NBEC task is a task in which people have to remember or mentally repeat certain numbers. So from 1000 onwards, you have to come 3. So 1000, 997, 995, you have to repeat that aloud. While doing that, you're also given a secondary task, which is basically A and B are presented to you, and there are statements which you have to verify. For example, whether B is preceded by A is preceded by B is not preceded by A, kind of a logical statement. Now, understand that the long term, by the proposition of what the your Anderson and your Schifrin and Anderson and Schifrin model tells, this rule is coded in long-term memory and should not be or cannot be accessed, because short-term memory is a way station and it has nothing to do with it. The very fact that you can verify this logic and still do the counting task will basically mean that 7 plus or minus 2 items, or the fact that attention cannot be diverted and in the long term, in the short term memory, or the very fact that there is only one way of encoding information, which the caustic information in short term memory, are all broken because the works of Ellen Bradley. So how do we then explain the idea of short term memory, all these shortcomings? And so a proposition was floated by Ellen Bradley, and the proposition was a new type of memory which is called the working memory. So how does the working memory work? Now think of the working memory as a hierarchical structure. At the top of it is the manager, which is called the central executive. The role of the central executive is an attentional system. So what its role is? Its role is to direct information which is coming to it into two different sub stores or slave stores. These stores are for audio, which is called the phonological loop, and for space and vision related information, which is called the visual spatial sketchpad. Information which is auditory in nature is directed to the phonological loop, which has something called a phonological buffer and a phonological store. Information which is of the visual and spatial nature is pushed by the central executive into the visual cache and the spatial the name is visual spatial cache or visual cache, and the spatial store. So there are two sub stores within that also. That is where it is. Integration of visual and spatial information happens through a small system which was proposed, which was advanced in 2004 and 2006, works of Ellen Bradley, which is called the episodic buffer. So episodic buffer is a junction station which takes in information from the phonological loop and the visual sketchpad or the spatial informations and connects them and sends this information back to the central executive. Another role of this episodic buffer is to communicate with long-term memory and pull out those propositional logic or rules or facts and use them for integrating information or for processing information which is fed by the central executive to the two slave systems. Now I have just demonstrated two slave systems. Advanced versions of this working memory theory says there are multiple slave systems which are available for different kind of sensory inputs or different kind of inputs which is coming from different sensory system. So this all in all is how the working memory structure is. Although this is just one theory of working memory, there is multiple theories. For example, we have embedded cognition model by Kaunen. You have the MSET or CSET, I forgot the name, so there is another model. There are at least 8 to 10 models of working memory in itself. There is a wonderful book by Preeti Shah and Macchiato Metache on working memory way back in 97. They wrote this book, and update of this book has been published about working memory theories in 2021 by Logi and Kaunen. So you can look at these books for finding new theories of working memory if you're interested in working in this area. And what these theories do is they just extend the way the working memory has been conceptualized. So I hope you understand what working memory is and how is it different from the short-term memory which was proposed by Atkinson and Schifrin rather. How do you differentiate between prejudice and stereotypes? Okay, for this, I think you should be registered for my other course on human behavior. Anyways, I'll take this question. So, the basic difference is in terms of something called the stereotypes is a kind of set that people have about certain kind of information, and prejudice is a certain kind of feeling or unconfirmed feeling about a particular group, people, or event, right? But it all depends upon something called the schema that people have or the scripts that people have in their mind built in from the belief system that they have. But a definite answer to that, this you can get from my other course. Right now, the mode that I'm in is a little bit into the cognitive area. So all I can say is the difference basically lies in the way the scripts uh, uh, is processed by our cognitive system. So on one hand, your prejudice is the feeling that you display, the action that you display, and the stereotype is uh, the frame of reference or the kind of belief system that you have. So I think in stereotype, in prejudice, you tend to act, but in your stereotype, you just tend to have some kind of prior unconfirmed belief about a certain group of people, places, or certain kind of events. But I'll probably ask you to go check, and I myself will go back and I'll provide a better answer to you in the forum. Is long-term memory physically stored? If stored, which part of the brain? Okay, so there is a debate on where this long-term memory or memories are stored as such, and the debate is about something called the process versus the structure process debate. Now, nobody actually can confirm whether there is a certain area or there are certain areas or there are certain networks associated with storing network, and the latest development in this way is that long-term memories also use something called storage areas and also use something called storage networks. Now if you look at any memory for that matter, let's look at the semantic memory of the word apple. This is a word. Now with the word apple, there will be images stored about what an apple is, there will be taste stored about what a taste of an apple is, there will be other things stored with it. And so these informations are different kind of informations about the word apple, which is a linguistic word or which is a meaning related word, a semantic word. So all this information needs to be stored in different places and they are connected by each other by different networks. So in one word, long-term memory is both a structure as well as a process. So that is how we need to understand it. So Naga Shamila, good evening. De-individualization. So de-individualization is a process in which you become a part of the group and acquire the personality of the group. And so you can do acts or you can do things and still you would not be held responsible. So people mix themselves in groups so that their I'd say their personality becomes the group personality. That is the definition of de-individualization. Again, Thakur, I'd ask you to ask these questions to me in the human behavior interaction session that we'll have soon because these questions come from social facilitation or social cognition. So I do understand the word cognition is related to it, but I'll have to have a different mindset for answering those questions. But that is the answer to what a de-individualization means. So the Mudra, the exam is supposed to be in the month of April, last week of April, I think. That is where you will have the final exams. Final exams will be in April. Uh, Tell me shortly about what ERP markers are exactly. Okay, so uh, for that you have to have a little bit understanding about how do we collect an EEG or an ERP. What really happens is that the brain shows different kind of activities when it is perceiving something or when it is processing something. Now, in a very basic, I'll try to explain it into a very laymanish type of answer because if I go into too detail, then I'll have to bring in several concepts which will require a lot of time, but we have limited time. So what happens is that we something called phase lock something or we something called lock something uh, the length of the typical waveform between the locking and the response is what is called an ERP. Again, it became too lamanish, so let me explain. Let's say that I want to understand what goes on in your Broca area or your Wernicke area when you hear a particular linguistic a linguistic term like a noun. So, is there a difference between how the Broca area processes noun? Nouns in comparison to verbs. Now, if I want to do a small experiment like this, a behavioral experiment can also result. But if I'm interested in the brain dynamics of it, or to see whether physically the brain does something when they are processing a noun or a verb, what I'll do is I will record the EEG from the Broca area or the regions of the Broca area. So mostly the parieto-temporal region. So I'll select the number of electrodes on those regions and I'll record an activity. So first what I'll do is I'll record a continuous activity from your brain. Then what I'll do is I'll present the word to you, a noun first and a verb later on. So let's say in one trial I'll present to you the noun. As soon as I present to you the noun, what I'll do is I will record the moment I present to you the noun, I'll record the EEG and it is phase locked with it right now, or it is locked with it right now. And till the point of time that you're seeing this word, I will record the EEG. After that also it will be it will be recorded, right? So this is for just one and noun. So I'll give you several nouns. Similarly, I'll give you several verbs. Then what I'll do is I'll take a grand total of all these nouns and these verbs, and I will subtract this from the ongoing EEG. So what I'll do is I'll get that special brain activation, or that unique brain activation which differs or which makes a difference between nouns and verbs. Technically speaking, I'd say that this is not possible to do, or I have not seen anybody doing something like this. But then this is how things would work. So what I'll do is when I take this now, so let's say I take 1,000 nouns and I have taken 1,000 readings as the noun is presented and is taken off, or let's say 100 millisecond past the presentation. Generally, why we take 1000 millisecond is the moment you present a word, so the first few seconds will be for attentional fixture, or for attention to grab in, and then it will go to the sensory register, and then it will go to the parietal lobe, it will get recognized and the meaning get recognized, and then the frontal lobe will come to know, okay, this is a noun, or now it will be able to differentiate between noun and so on and so forth. Also, we have attentional studies on it. So for just now, we just want to know, on recognizing a noun, on recognizing a verb, does the brain do any differences? So we'll take right from the point of time the noun is presented and the verb is presented. We will take a EEG measure from that point of time to 1000 millisecond. Why 1000 millisecond? Again, the reason that it takes almost 1000 millisecond for the brain to recognize what is being presented and differentiate it semantically. Although there are other theories which says that it can happen in 500 to 600 milliseconds also, but we are taking, for safer bet, we are taking it to till 1000 milliseconds. So we'll take this for different nouns. Let's say we have 1000 nouns, and we'll take this and add the EEGs of all these 1000, and when we do that, we'll have a mean EEG for the noun and for the verb, and then we'll subtract this from the ongoing EEG. So once we do that, we will have the unique signature, and this unique signature is called the ERP, or the event related potential. So event is the occurrence of this word, and the potential which occurs because of only this word, and separating everything outside of that is what is called the event related potential. So after that, what we can do is we can look at the timing of when these differences are. So that unique difference in the brain, and what electrode position it is happening, what voltage it is happening, what is the signature of it, all those things count into it. But in very simple words, this unique signature, this unique change in electrical property of the brain or the neurons and underlying that Broca area, also depends upon what area you are looking at, is what is an ERP. So that is what a difference of a ERP, or what is an ERP. Okay, so I hope you understood that. So why does placebo effect occur? Thakur says the placebo effect is something which happens to us because of something called belief. So people have a belief that things will go good, and placebo effect, we want to see whether a person is or a certain kind of treatment works or not. Sometimes beliefs makes us work. There are a number of movies, there are a number of things, real life examples where people's belief system make them work. Now, how does that work? I really don't know. But if you have stronger beliefs or if you have stronger trust on certain things, it tends to work for you. Even people have seen or doctors have seen cancer being cured that way. Now, for me, I have not seen that thing, but placebo effect generally is to see whether the power of suggestion has anything to do with your treatment or not. So, if it is the drug which is making the changes, or if it is something other than the drug, or your belief which is making you treat, that is how we do the placebo. So, generally, placebo, what happens is we take, let's say, a drug that we are testing, so, they have several ounces of that, and one which is called the zero drug treatment, which is the placebo, there will give you a sugar solution. And so based on that, or maybe a water solution, and based on the comparison that we have between the control group, which is the placebo, and the experimental group, which is the different doses of the drug, we can find an appropriate statistical difference between these two groups, and we can then generalize our results. Mudra says we haven't received the uh, hall ticket yet. So, Mudra, what I'll do is I'll talk to um, people from NPTL and let you know when you'll get the hall ticket. But I think it happens somewhere in April. Somewhere in April, you'll get the hall ticket. So, that is what happens. View of cognitive psychology and mental disorders. Uh, so, it would generally be the fact that improper processing or improper cognitions can lead to mental disorders. For example, one of the views is, let's take the example of phobias. So, why do phobias develop? Phobia develop because we perceived or we looked at an event in a way which created irrational fear. What are phobias? These are irrational fears, right? And so what happened is the wrong kind of reinforcement was given, and since these are negative reinforcements, so negative reinforcement tend to work much faster than positive reinforcement, and because of that, people tend to develop phobia. So one good example of looking at mental disorders or your disorders as would be is the way they are cognitively processed. So their views are, the cognitivist view about mental disorders is that incorrect way of processing, or I would say a biased way of cognitive processing could lead to mental disorders. That is what I believe is the view of cognitivists, although I have never come across the cognitive viewpoint in mental disorders, but I think that should be the answer. What I'll do is I'll look it up and I'll definitely give you an answer in the forum. So Hema, how do cognitive psychologists differ from cognitive science? In cognitive science, you have multiple disciplines. You would have philosophy, you would have electrical engineering, you would have people from neuroscience, from biology, from other fields as well. In cognitive psychology, you will only have psychologists studying cognition. So, cognitive psychology is a part of this cognitive science program. Thakur sir, how access psychological researchers in India conducted by how to access psychological researchers in India conducted by Indian psychologists in institute like NIMHANS. Um, from what I understand, that you want to meet these people. Access in the sense, you want to access their work, or do you want to meet these people? If you want to meet these people, a good start would be visiting the NIMHANS website. If you could be more specific on the question, I could give you a much better answer. Uh, I think what you mean is how to get the information. So NIMHANS, from what I know, is a closed system. So you will have to go there in the library and then get some results, or you can contact them online through email, and they can give you those information. I think that's the best way. Um, very long ago, I wanted something from demands, and I actually had to go to demands physically, the library, access the library, and get some information about some study which was published. So I think that is it. Or if you have some friend in demands, maybe they can. Uh, we don't have a clinical psychology database as such in India, as far as I know, but it may be there. But if you have something like that, you can access it through there, or you may have to physically contact, go to the institute, or contact online these people, and they will provide you with the access of their work. That's what research papers. So that's what I said. You'll have to physically go to the library. They have versions of their work stored there, or you can directly write to those authors. And from what my experience is, they tend to reply you, so they'll give you a copy of the papers. So that is how you access them. Uh, so this particular uh, I don't know the language in which the name is spelled, but it says VOMRED. So, this is a code. I'm very bad at code breaking, so if you can provide me with the key, I'll be able to give you the answer. So that's for now. So as I was saying, so this is what I have for you today. I think if you have more questions, we still have around 20 odd minutes. If you have questions, you can put those questions here on the forum. I'm still here. If you don't have questions, maybe later on, if you think about some question, put it into the forum, and I'll answer those questions there for you. Uh, all suggestions, feedbacks are welcome. All kind of interactions that you wish to have, or any questions that you have, are welcome. Um, One suggestion about a course, I'm trying to take it up with you. Some questions have not been satisfactorily able to give answers for you in this session, like for example, the exact difference between a prototype or a prejudice and a stereotype. I'll give those answers to you on the forum, or during the next session, which is the human behavior course. I can give you the answers there itself. Um, uh, okay, Thakur. So, what is meta memory? So, in fact, I was searching myself for this term, but from what I know or what I think is, it's a kind of memory which sort of cannot be accessed. So I may be wrong here, not exactly know this term meta memory, but from the likes of it, from what I think it means is a kind of memory that you get that is not so conscious for you. So it's a memory, but you don't know how you are accessing it, or you are getting information about it. Let me get back to you on what is meta memory. Let me read a little bit about it, and then I'll be able to give a good answer, or a more fruitful answer to your question. Okay, so Hema, if you have those questions, uh, what we can do is, from the next session onwards, you can put those questions to me, and I'll be happy to answer. You can also pose these questions if I have the time, or when I have the time. I'll definitely have the time, but when I have the time, I'll try to answer those questions for you. What are questions, research questions you have? But you have to be very specific on what you are asking. So do that, and maybe in the next session, instead of talking about the course, because all answers regarding the course we can always do it on the forum. What specific questions you think which I can help you with, you can post those questions onto the forum, and we can discuss some of those questions, because each question will require an input of different type. So if I'm able to understand your question, I'll definitely answer those. So, or you can also put those questions into an email and send it to me. As I said, the only way to contact me is through an email. So send me an email, and I'll definitely reply to you. It may say take some time. Bear with me. The reason is that there are other works also which needs to be completed. I have research scholars; they have their own problems. So as I get time, and definitely I'll answer your question, but as I get time, I'll definitely answer your question. So it's for everyone who's watching here, or if you want to suggest it to your friend of yours, if you have questions regarding cognitive psychology, I may not be so good in other fields of cognitive psychology, but three areas, which is attention and memory, which is the episodic kind of memory, and an interaction between them. If you want to understand, then that is what my expertise lies on. You can always ask questions related to that to me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions, or happy to suggest what I think should be the answer to your question. So you're welcome to put this question. So, what is concept formation process? So, Thakur, what really happens is, first you have to understand what a concept is. Now, when you store something at the level of a concept, what it has to have certain qualities. So, in a concept formation, for forming a concept, the one way to form a concept, the easiest way to form a concept is to look at a number of exemplars of a concept. For example, let's look at the concept fruit. Now, how to define a fruit, right? The fruit is a concept, right? But how do you know what a fruit is? The best way is to look at the typical example and the most weird example. If you do that, what will happen is you will span a length of exemplars which fall between them. Fruit, for example, let's look at tomato. Now, tomato generally sometimes you'll find it in fruit, sometimes you'll find it in vegetables. There is no specific category to that. So it is kind of a in between kind of a thing. And the fruitiest of fruit, apple, compare them, think about what features they have. And so when you are able, and then take other examples, for example, banana, take the example of an orange, and see what is the commonality between them. Once you see the commonality between them, and the most common of these features, for example, one feature with fruit is that one features of fruit is that they are generally kind of sweet, right? So that's one thing. The other thing with the fruit is that fruit different from flowers, as in it's comes from the stem or whatever. I'm not very good at the biology of it, so it has seeds or that kind of a thing. But in technical terms, if you look at all these bananas or apples or oranges or that kind of a thing, they will have some features which are common among them. Now, these features will become something called the necessary features of this concept, and so any member of any new member, if you want to add into it, should have these features. These are called the necessary and sufficient features. But and this will be present. This necessary and sufficient feature will be present in each member or mostly the members of this fruit community. Let's say the idea of it that fruits can be eaten raw. Now, if you look into it, you have bananas, you have oranges, you have apples, you have tomato. The weirdest example, as well as the most, say, typical example, both of them confer to the preposition that they can be eaten raw. And then look at the other features. So on one hand, your tomato has a kind of a soury taste, and it can be used in vegetables as well as fruits or some other thing, whereas apples cannot be used as vegetables, and then it doesn't have a sour taste or some other things related to that. So in this way, what will happen is there will be specific features of each exemplar, which is called the characteristic features. On the other hand, there will be some common features, which is called the necessary and sufficient features, and these will be the top features. So how do you form categories then, or how categories are formed? These categories are formed by this kind of process, in which you look at the number of exemplars, and from them you find the commonality, and based on this commonality you develop some kind of mental representation, and this representation now becomes a category. So I hope I could answer your question. So are your books or notes available somewhere on sleep researches? Uh, um, Papers are there, Thakur. You can just go to my link, my web link, and I think most papers will be downloadable. If you go to my ResearchGate profile, you will find a lot of papers, or most of the papers on the sleep that we have done. is available. You can download it from there. If you don't find the paper, just let me know or mail to any author. Most of these authors are my students who have now become faculties in different institutes. So mail to them and they'll send it to you. If you still don't get it, just mail it to me and I'll give a copy of it. So they are available. There's only one book that I have published up till now. It's part of my research. So if you want, I can probably see if I get a e-copy and I can send it to you. That can happen. Other than that, most researchers that I technically do is available on my ResearchGate profile. You can download it from there, right? And also for my students who are working in this area. So thank you, Thakur. So any more questions? If you are watching this right now, uh, you can post it right now for me, or if you think that something you have missed, you can always put that question into the forum and I'll answer those questions into the forum. Okay, so I'll be happy to answer those questions. Mostly forums are handled by students, so they answer it. But if something becomes out of their range, they send it to me. So you can send in a direct email also, but a direct email to me will take some time, and that I'll say because there are some other works always available for me to do. So, but I'll definitely reply to you. So you may have to wait for sometimes a day or two, at other times a week, but within a week I'll definitely reply to you. So those questions can be put there and I'll be happy to answer your questions. So Mohana Krishna, and the question is, can you please briefly explain moral judgment and self-esteem in terms of memory? um, I'll have to look at it and give it an explanation to you. Right now, I'm blank at this point of time how this self-esteem and moral judgment really works. Although there is some work on moral judgment and memory, you'll find some links with Vygotsky and Piaget's work. They talk about this development of moral development stage and how this moral development stage is related to this memories or the belief systems. I think that is one connection to it, but I'll definitely have to look at it and I can give you a better satisfactory answer. So I'll put it into the forum for you. So good grades, the only way to get good grades is do the assignment properly. And even if you are not able to answer a question in the assignment, once the assignment is over, you will come to know the correct answers. So look at the answers and try to reason why this is the answer. If you still don't understand, send it to me or send it to the forum and we will explain to you why this should be the correct answer. And if you do that and spend some time with questions, don't look at videos in one go. If you break the videos into several parts, into 2, 3, 4 parts, and one video into 20 minutes part, and look at different points of time, I think you will be able to answer most of the questions in the assignment and do it in detail. So don't worry about that. This is how you need to work along. Questions directly from assignment or somewhere else? It is basically there is a combination. You would find this combination in the website itself, the NPTEL website itself. So some of it are alike the assignment questions, some of it will be new questions. So there is a combination to it. But if you look at the videos properly and do the assignment, I think you will get a decent and good marks in your NPTEL. So any other questions if you have? I'm still here for the next 5, 6 minutes. If you have questions, please ask the questions. I'll be happy to answer. If you still feel that something you have not answered or something that you think I can answer for you, put it in the forum and I'll answer it there for you. And about these 2, 3 questions about prejudice and stereotypes, or the fact that how moral judgment and self-esteem can be explained in terms of memory, that I'll answer it to the forum. I'll look into it, what it is and how to explain it, and I'll form an answer and I'll put it there for you into the forum. Although on one way, as I said, this moral judgment has to do with your beliefs or the way your rights and wrongs have been taught to you. So it becomes part of your long-term memory. Okay, thank you, Mohana. So I'll definitely try to give an answer to you in your in the forum itself. So I think we can wind up the session for today. So thank you, users and learners, for being here. I will. It was a pleasant experience for me to answer these questions for you. What we'll do is we'll meet in the next session, the third and final session. And if you want to ask anything related to your research questions, also you are more than welcome to do that. For any question which I have not been able to satisfactorily provide an answer, I'll give an answer to that in the forum. You can write back to me, give your suggestions, feedbacks on what you want to improve, how do you want to see this course improve, put those questions or things that you think has not been taught to you or is lacking in the present course. Maybe we can think of this in the next course. So with these final words, I'll meet you in the next live session. The rates will be announced to you, so you can probably mark it in your calendar. So for now, from this MOOC studio, it is thank you and goodbye.